Hi there, Colette Kemp here with Melissa Posey Loose today. I'm here with interviewing Melissa for the IFDF. She recently did a webinar series yesterday, and Melissa's been in the profession for quite some time. Would that be correct, Melissa?
Yes, that's correct. That's okay to say.
Okay, so could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what brought you to the profession?
Yes, absolutely. I actually grew up in the funeral business, but then I decided to step away from that for my degrees and worked as a communicator and educator. I just worked in all kinds of different realms in that field of marketing and communications for a while. But then I moved back home, as luck would have it, and I began to work at my family's firm, just doing bookkeeping and doing some community marketing and things like that. And I had always been kind of told that there wasn't a place for a woman in the funeral business. And I'm not going to say that as a shadow on my family or anything. That was just a little bit different time. But as I worked there and I began to interact with all these families, my father pulled me aside and said, I think I've had a change of heart. I think you need to be a funeral director. And so we talked that through. And so I ended up serving an apprenticeship with him and doing the other things that I needed to do to become licensed. So I am a licensed funeral director, and I've been licensed for, I think, about the past 15 years. I've got to look at my license card. But that's kind of what brought me here. And I did find that my heart truly was here in death care. I love providing care for families that have these deep emotional needs, and providing services that meet those needs and help them really walk on their grief journey.
And I think women would be, as well as men, particularly good at that job. So it's good that things are changing, and you were probably one of the hopefully not one of the first, but leading part of that.
Yeah. And I have to say, there are other cultures and demographic groups that have, I think, done a bit better job than we have bringing women into and including them, because, I mean, let's face it, historically speaking, women were the providers for death care. They were the keepers of the deceased and the carers for them. And then we saw that shift a bit with the Industrial Revolution. And so we're coming back to kind of a reckoning moment. And where do we want to be? So
that's wonderful. And could you tell me a little bit about the arranger training that you're currently involved in with the NFDA?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, I'm with National Funeral Directors Association, and I'm their training and development manager. And as part of my job, I do our arranger training program. So it's a very unique opportunity. It's been around for a bit, but we are refreshing it at this time. We still got our basic 5 components. So if anyone listening has attended, we still have those. But we are updating the conversations that we're having and how to approach families better and offer them choices, because we know they want that. And we can talk about that in a bit. But I will say that our arranger training is really focused on helping these funeral directors effectively communicate with the families they serve and convey value to them. And I'll add, because I noticed this in Nashville, and subsequently after that, people that are attending are not just funeral directors anymore. We have a lot of administrative staff and vendors who are interested in attending our training, just to understand the processes better about the touch points that we have with families.
So you don't have to be a licensed funeral director to attend this training?
Don't. Now, if you need the CE and all, that's great, and come as a licensed funeral director. But this is also open to anyone in the death care space, so that you can just, again, more effectively communicate with the families and the clients that you're serving in this space.
I did not know that. That's wonderful. And so in your opinion, Melissa, why is this training necessary, and how often should, we'll say, funeral professionals update their skills in this area of service?
Okay, great question. I think this is necessary. Any type of continuing education, I think, is really necessary. We really need to be entrenched with that, because the families we're serving, they're changing. Yes, they have basic needs that have always been there by virtue of the fact that they've experienced a death. But their preferences for purchasing things, for having services, is definitely different than, let's say, when my father or grandfather started in this business, or my great-grand. So we need to be aware of those things. And at NFDA, we try to be up on that. I base a lot of the training that we do on current survey results. We discuss those things in our training. And it's not just a lecture, it's a time where funeral professionals, funeral service or death care professionals come together listen to what I have to offer. But then I also engage people in a lot of conversations so that we can learn from each other and really negotiate what the best solutions are to some of the, challenges that we face every day.
You just made me think of something, Melissa. Do you think that the family's needs have changed through each generation, or is it now accelerating even through the current time?
I think it's accelerating through the current time. I think social media is driving a lot of that. We know that, consumers coming to any kind of service-based industry base what they're coming with, their expectations on word of mouth, personal needs, and their past experience. I just spoke to that with this IFDF webinar that I just did. But part of that word of mouth and past experience is what we're hearing and seeing on social media. I mean, funerals are broadcast now. That wasn't done, So with people experiencing all of these things, they're having different expectations. And then, of course, the economy is just changing all the time. And so that really throws things into the whole price category and what their needs are there and their expectations.
And if somebody attends this training, how should they approach it to get the most out of it?
Well, first of all, they can come by themselves, but I highly recommend coming with another member of your team. I know that's an expense of time and an expense of travel and, all of that and the registration. But if you would come together, I offer you some real life scenarios, things that we hear all the time that are talked about in the death care space. Like, for example, how to approach the financial obligations. How do you talk to somebody and present them with your price policy? So if you bring somebody else with you, then you can sit there when I hand this over to you and say, how would you solve this problem? And you sit there and talk about it in the parameters of your own protocols, of your own culture, of your funeral home. And then you can listen to how others do it. And maybe that presents its own opportunity for you to go back home and not only apply what you've learned in the training, but reconsider maybe some things that you are currently doing and how you can do them better. That's really what we're trying to do with Arranger training. Yes, you can come and get skills and hone skills, right? But I want people walking away now from our Arranger training eager to go back and apply it and rethink culture and protocol and procedure so that we can better meet these families where they're at and then lead them in this journey.
So it seems like if somebody came with, instead of just one person from a firm or a company, or if a couple of people came, then they would also have the benefit of probably some creativity that would take place because they're each having different experiences.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you're going to hear what I present is what I present. It's on the slide or coming out of my mouth. But everybody's going to hear that a little bit differently because you're bringing different personal experiences to it. So yes, it's a great time to come and learn, listen, and recraft.
I love that. And I think also, even though what I've learned so far about this profession is, even though people are competitors, the desire to help people is very strong. So you can even learn something from another funeral home that they may be doing that's worked.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think to some extent we have let others outside of our industry message for us. I think coming together and learning together and negotiating solutions together, we really come more at from a unified front, right? So that we can provide the messaging and really be accurate about the information that people are getting.
So with that said,
yeah,
are there any challenges that funeral directors are facing nowadays when it comes to making arrangements that didn't exist in the past? And how do you think these challenges should be approached?
Yes, I'm going to throw you a couple of statistics. And some of the folks watching this may have heard this already from me, but I think it bears merit. Okay, so in our latest 2022 Consumer Awareness and Preferences surveys, respondents were asked, I'm going to read this right off. What level of comfort do you have planning and executing a funeral or memorial service without a funeral director's input? Now, we received the fact that 59.4% of respondents felt that they could do it on their own. So then the question was then posed right after that, well, how many of you would still contact a funeral director to help you, even though you've got this level of comfort doing it on your own? In 2020, that number was around 63%. I think it was like 63.3. 2022, that number fell to 58.7%. Now, I'm not here to say people don't have confidence in you. We see a decline, but I think we're at a real moment of opportunity. And I think when we answer the question of, why are you doing something the way you do it? Well, this is the way we've always done it. I just heard this from a colleague in my own association earlier this week. Let me say two things about that. Number one, I think that tradition, there is definitely a place for that, and it does lend us credibility. But number two, if we only answer with that answer, we are boxing ourselves in and eliminating the possibilities of opportunities in the future. And that's where we're at. We know that our consumers want choices, they're price conscious, and they want to be involved. Are we prepared and ready to lead them in that experience? And so today's arranger training may be just a little different than maybe what somebody went to 3 or 4 years ago. I think it merits coming back and having a conversation with me and the people that I'll be in the room, because we will discuss how to better answer questions and better convey value to these new consumers. At NFDA, we're always trying to do research around that, and offer educational opportunities for you so you can better answer those questions.
And I think it's really helpful that you're basing the education that you're offering on statistics. So it's not necessarily this is your opinion. Yes, you've got the experience to give your opinion, but you're also basing it on facts of what families, consumers are telling you.
Right, exactly. Yes, this training was actually developed by a panel of funeral and service experts, if you will. They're entrenched in providing great service, and they were from around the country. Several of the people on there I have known throughout my life. But we've taken that good thing that they produced about 5 or 6 years ago, and then infused it more with more research so that we can show you, yes, this is what we think you should do, but now let's show you why, because this is exactly what consumers are telling us. And yeah, and coupled with that too, let me just say, we also show you some current tools and resources that are like free for you to use, and we go explore how to use those too with families. So they just really amplify your credibility and all the good things that you've already done, all the training you've gone through, the schooling. We show you how to better apply that.
So once somebody's gone through this training and let's say they're implementing it back at the funeral home, what do you recommend, or what does NFDA recommend that they do to kind of get then this new messaging out to families? Because if they are doing things differently, how do we get families to know that this is available to them or the general public?
Well, I think that you can do this through social media. I think that you can do this through your advertising. I always go back to the old-fashioned way of just connecting with your community. It's important for funeral directors, and I know it's hard for smaller firms. I get that, to come from a smaller firm. But it's important to make time to get out into the community and know who you are potentially serving. A lot of times, we're in a small town and we serve the same generation, 3 or 4 times or whatever. They know us. But what about all those people that are moving in? We have a very transient population in the United States. So they need to know who we are. And a web page is great. A social media post is great. But what if they have actually met that person by volunteering with them at a community organization, attending church with them? I mean, there's just a lot that we can do. We can reach out to healthcare providers. So I talk a little bit about how to do that, and I'm always happy to connect with people further just to have that conversation.
Okay. And speaking of getting out in the community and outreach, as we head into the end of this year, and this is our last question, but where will we find you? Where will we see you? Because I know you travel and you're educating around the country, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, I'm going to be in person in Baltimore at the convention doing arranger training. So if anybody's interested and they're coming to Baltimore, it's not too late to sign up. We'd love to have you. I'll also be in Toronto at the Professional Women's Conference in Canada in November, also doing that arranger training. And that's always very interesting. So if you live in a state, if there was anybody that was interested to come up there, it's great to hear the Canadian perspective, because it is a little different in general. And there's some very innovative things they're doing there. So I highly recommend that. And then also I'll be in Maine at the Maine Association's convention in November. And let's see, I've got a few webinars on tap. So you can always visit the NFDA education page and look at our calendar of events. It'll tell what not only I'm doing, but Mike Nicodemus with his cremation certification program and our webinars. We've got a few left this year. And we have a lot of on-demand learning as well. So I would invite people to come and explore what we offer. Like there's a telephone training on there that's a little bit older, but it's great content. And I think we need that now more than ever with people phone shopping. So, yeah.
So what we'll do, Melissa, is we'll put a link to some of those resources in this video so people could go and explore. And if they'd like to reach out to you directly, is there a way to do that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, but you're happy to email me, which is mloose@nfda.org, or give me a call and I can provide you with that number as well.
Okay, wonderful. And then just to finish up for our members, we know that you recently, yesterday, you gave a straight talk for the IFDF. And this was the title was Keys for Crossing and Closing the Experience Perception Gap.
Yes, it's a little
just before we go, it's a good title. Tell me where it came from.
Well, I actually wrote an article that was published in the March issue of the Director magazine, and it was about this perception experience divide and closing the gap. So I based this presentation on that. It's a lot of I've updated it though since March, since I wrote that article, and our new survey came out. And I've also included several things that kind of go beyond what was in that article. And I speak to things like the phone experience. So yeah. So try to find the article in the Director, but I'd love for you to see the webinar. We had great engagement, and thanks to those who joined us yesterday. It was fantastic. I learned a lot from you, and I hope you learned something from me as well.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And I will also be putting a link for everybody if you want to contact Ruth at the IFDF office so that she can help you to access that webinar. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks for having me. It's great to speak with you, Colette. Thanks.
It was my pleasure.